Hey, what's going on, Teach Better fam? It's Chris here, and I am bringing you a bonus episode from last weekend's Admin Mastermind Rewind and live Q&A bi-weekly family check-in with Rae Hughart and Dave Schmittou. We hope you enjoy the awesome conversations and discussions that took place last weekend during this event, and we hope that you follow us in the future. You can follow us on Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube and Twitter for any of these events coming up at Teach Better Team. We hope you enjoy this episode and hope it brings a lot of positivity to start your week.
Hey everyone, we are here on our Sunday. It's actually Easter Sunday, so happy Easter to anyone celebrating this evening. We are here for our bi-weekly family check-in where we recap our Administrative Mastermind. We take your questions live, just all the good things. We also have had a lot of activity in the Teach Better Team private Facebook group. If you guys aren't in there, that's at teachbettergroup.com. There's been a lot of questions recently. So outside of taking your questions live, we will also be addressing some of those. So we have a lot in store, Dave. Do you feel like we need to write this down and maybe make a list? Like, I don't know what our plan is.
I am ready. Let's roll.
Okay.
Did Rae Hughart just say she doesn't know what the plan is? I don't believe that for a second.
We'll be right back here, but in the comments, please say that you're watching. We'd love to hear where you're watching from. We'd love to hear if you enjoyed the beautiful weather that some of us were fortunate enough to have today. So get ready for the fun. We'll be right back. Hey, Dave. Happy Sunday. Happy Easter. How are you?
I am doing great. I did get to experience that amazing weather like you did there in Illinois. I almost felt like I was down on the beach again. Almost. Not quite.
I do say we had some good weather here in the Midwest that, it was like 70s. It was just gorgeous. I did a nice long walk with the dogs, and I was impressed at how well they managed a long walk. We haven't done a long walk in a long time, and I'm also in a shoulder sling. So I was really impressed with the dogs today. Is really the celebration for me.
That's awesome. I was really impressed that my kids have not entered into a marshmallow peep coma yet. Their Easter baskets were a lot of chocolate, a lot of marshmallows, and just about gone already. So whatever, I'm teaching them about budgeting. And if they choose to spend all their money at once, that's on them. Don't come asking daddy for more candy bars tomorrow. That's all I'm saying.
So do you check in with them every hour to make sure like the sugar overload hasn't gotten to them yet?
Well, see, I'm down in the basement right now. I will hear when the sugar overload kicks in because they'll either be charging or it'll just be completely silent and I'll know they're all passed out sleeping somewhere. So
yeah, that will be the problem. But there we go. Okay. So if you didn't have good weather today, we want to at least give you hope that maybe it's coming, because I know that we get good weather. Sometimes that means that like in the Midwest, when we get good weather, sometimes that means like the East Coast, like you'll get it tomorrow. So there is hope. We do have a lot of people commenting that they had nice weather today, and people that are joining us, even though they're also celebrating Easter Sunday. So hi guys, great to see you. Oh my gosh. Always a good day when you have your best friends getting together to hang out, right?
True story. Well, this is a day all about family. So let's come together and just continue to break bread together. I'm all about it.
It's always funny because for those of you who don't know, I don't celebrate Easter. It's not a holiday that's in my faith, but I very much love celebrating other people's celebrations. Because in my mind, even though I may not celebrate the holiday, I love celebrating other people's holidays because I'll take any excuse to celebrate, right?
I saw you dyeing some eggs with some little ones the other day, huh?
I did. On Friday night, I got to hang out with some of my colleagues who, we're fortunate enough that we're all vaccinated, but we're also fortunate enough that we've been in each other's bubble a little bit for the majority of COVID. And these girls taught me how to dye Easter eggs. It was so fun.
That's amazing. Was this your first time doing it?
It was my first time doing it. And let me tell you, learning how to dye Easter eggs with 6-year-olds is definitely the way to go.
So yes and no. And I know this isn't necessarily on script here, but if I can tell a story, back when I only had one kid, so we're talking a long time ago now, right? Yeah, this was like 3, 4, whatever, do the math, a long time ago. Back when I had one kid, I went down to Florida one year for Easter. My kid at the time was I think 4 years old, and I have a niece who's about the same age. Had the great idea to have them dye Easter eggs together. Then took it a step farther and said, but it's going to be messy. Let's put them in a kiddie pool together to dye eggs. in the living room of my parents' house.
Oh.
We did this on the Saturday night before Easter Sunday. Let's just say my, at the time, 4-year-old kid went to church the next day looking like an Easter egg himself, covered from head to toe in all of the Easter egg colors. So don't do that. If you're going to take anything else away from this, find a safe space and just dip it in little cups. You don't need to go the kiddie pool route. Yeah.
We did the little cup method, and I do have to brag a little bit on the parents of the 6-year-olds that I was spending time with. I think we had a 6-year-old, a 7-year-old, and maybe a 2.5-year-old. They were like the most mature humanly possible. Like, I think I actually broke more rules dyeing Easter eggs than these children. They were very specific. They used all the tools. They were very patient. I, on the other hand, was like, come on, when's it going to be ready? I'm using spoons. I mean, it was not my brightest moment. I was not modeling good behavior. Maybe that's
but you had fun. That's good. Yeah. And you made memories.
Made memories, absolutely. I see a lot of people are jumping in. It's really good to see you guys. Brienne is actually still in her car, so thanks for tuning in, Bri. It's always good to see you. I do want to give a shout out to anybody here. You know, we have this biweekly family check-in every other Sunday. Dave and I even joked, like, are we supposed to go live when it's, a holiday weekend?
Super Bowl Sunday, Easter Sunday, we are family. Let's come together.
Exactly. Our mindset is, not everybody celebrates these holidays, and we want to be here consistently, regardless of what's going on in the world, in positive ways. And, when things, we get hiccups and it's not so great. So we are live here, but the whole point of us being live today is to take your questions, is to help in some way, share some positive energy to you guys starting your week. So feel free to throw any topics you want us to discuss in the chat, any questions you may have, maybe a celebration that you're excited about this week, or something that maybe you're anticipating this week that we can talk through. So we're here for all of it. We're kind of easy going, Dave. I kind of like it about our biweekly family check-ins. It's a little casual.
I feel like every time I'm live, it's kind of casual. Like there's kind of a script, kind of a plan. But we kind of just go where the conversation goes. And I love that. And this one specifically, it's all about the comments. Whatever people throw in the comments is where the conversation's going to go. So bring your questions.
I do want to say Chelsea to me is like all-star mom. Like, I follow her Instagram to be like, oh, I may not ever have children, but if I did, I just want to be like Chelsea. And she says, the trick is being able to dye eggs without getting it all over your hands. I still haven't mastered that. I want credit. I can't show you my other hand, but I have no blue dye. I feel like Chelsea, I want bonus points here. Okay. But Nikki's echoing the same thing. That is a challenging skill for sure. Dave, outside of the questions I know we're going to get to, and I know we also had some Facebook group comments that we wanted to talk about as well, in addition to obviously recapping the mastermind that's going on every single Tuesday, I do want to just give a little shout out to you because you have an exciting series that's starting on Wednesday.
I am so excited. Like you have no idea. I've been giddy about this. Actually, I've been on my computer for the last 2.5, 3 hours just preparing for this because I get to share the screen with the one and only Caitlin Giordano. And that is super intimidating. I mean, that woman is a genius. She is brilliant. Mm-hmm. And I am just going to be trying to keep up. We're going to be going live every Wednesday for the next few weeks here.
5 weeks, I think.
Yeah. Breaking down grading, how to have those conversations, answering people's questions live, similar to what we're going to be doing here with this Focus on the Focus series. And I'm pumped. I can't wait.
It's funny because I may or may not be in cahoots with team members to bring back the Daily Drop-In, which was a series we did when COVID hit that kind of I feel like brought the family even closer, right? And when I was looking at the calendar for what's going on this spring, between the Grid Method live series and the Focus on the Focus series starting this week, we are live not only constantly, but the PD that's being shared on all these social media platforms is so cool. I am literally tuning in to Chad's Building a Grid series, even though I've used the Grid Method in my own classroom for years and I coach teachers on it because it's such good discussion. I feel like I'm always getting things that I can do better. And the Focus on the Focus series is something I personally am just excited to tune in for. The PD is going to be so good.
Yeah, and I know we'll talk about the Mastermind Rewind stuff later on, but it's the same concept. I've been an administrator, I've been a leader for 13 years now, but every single week I get to learn something different. from hearing a different perspective from somebody else that's done it just a little bit differently. It's the same thing with Chad and the building a grid. You might be a master at mastery-based learning and instruction, but to hear art teachers and reading teachers and writing teachers and math teachers all bringing their own perspective, it's just so powerful, and it can only help you grow.
I'm really excited. I do want to talk about the Focus on the Focus series, but I want to give a little shout out. If you guys haven't watched the Building a Grid series, which I think that one's like an 8 or 9 week series that's like at the tail end. It's ending the 13th. So I think there's 2 more weeks left. That streams on Tuesday nights. And that's where Chad literally goes live just like this, but with a teacher from around the world who wants to build a grid, but doesn't even have like the bones of it started. And so they truly are going through and building the entire thing live. They're sharing their screens, and really you're just kind of previewing a conversation. You're getting to be a fly on the wall of a conversation that we do all the time. And this week is a PE grid. So if you know any PE teachers, or if you yourself like want to incorporate movement more intentionally, or to be honest, if you want to incorporate partner work more intentionally, watching the PE grid is going to be a really, really fun experience. And I don't know that I've ever seen Chad build a PE grid. Like that's something that I'm excited to watch, because I don't often get to coach PE teachers on using the grid, outside of a few experiences I've had.
I'm really excited about it and intrigued at the same time, because there's a part of me that says it's a natural fit, because mastery and competency based is all about being able to go and do and apply and show that you can transfer skills. And that's the essence of PE, when you're out there doing the skills. But being able to see that and comparing that to what we've seen so far, I'm excited.
Yeah, no, there's been some really good ones, guys. If you missed it, they will be all saved like in a course at Teach Better Academy. So it's super easy. Otherwise, right now, you can just go to the YouTube channel. The Teach Better Team YouTube channel has them all logged. But I spoke at a PE conference Thursday and Friday last week, and one of them was on how the grid would work in a PE classroom. And it was strictly like a PE event for educators around the country. And it was so interesting because the woman who's joining us live on Tuesday was in my session last week.
That's cool.
And we were actually having some dialogue. She texted me after and said, oh my gosh, I'm even more excited now to bring my questions, to bring my ideas, to bring my targets to chat on Tuesday, because we're able to kind of preview some of the conversation last week. It was really interesting. So I'm excited. Shout out to Dana Kirby. So excited for that series Tuesday. And then once you soak that up, Wednesday is Focus on the Focus, which is just going to be nuts. So I'm so stoked.
It's a busy week, but an amazing week.
It is. And hey, by the way, guys, we know that we're live very often, and we know that it's really hard to keep up to date with stuff. So we do have our events calendar now available for each and every one of you. teachbetter.com/events calendar. You can literally subscribe to a Google Calendar that will just give you updates on when the team's live. Like, for example, if you want to catch Dave Schmidl live twice on Wednesday, because, that makes sense to be live twice on Wednesday, then you will have the reminder on your calendar. Dave, what's your plan Wednesday? Because you're literally live for 2 hours. I think you have a break in between.
I feel like this Wednesday is going to be the prep for the 12-hour live on the 24th. It's like, go live, take a break. Go live, take a break. So
you're right.
I'm going to squeeze some food in there, a little bit of prep work, just breathing a little bit, and it's going to be fun, though.
We're not releasing secrets, but have you seen the schedule for yourself for the 12-hour live?
I've seen 2 versions of it, yes. So I'm excited, yeah.
I'm going to mention, I'm like, you're live for a lot of that 12-hour live. Maybe you not know that yet, but yeah.
Yeah, I'm with some amazing people, though. So don't worry, people. You're not going to have to just look at this. I get to just sit there and click buttons while other amazing people drop wisdom. So
that 12-hour live schedule will be out very soon, like within the next week or so, guys. That's going to be a big thing coming out. So keep an eye out for that full list, literally 12 hours of professional development. We have a ton of people joining us, and a lot of sponsors and giveaways that will be announced. So that will be cool. But Dave, obviously, like this Wednesday, April 7th, you're live for Brain Break with Jeff, which I'm so sorry about. That's, a tough experience. And then you're live with Caitlin for Focus on the Focus series, an hour later.
So when are you and I hanging out, Rae?
Yeah, I thought I was lucky that I was live with you on Sundays, and then I'm seeing everyone else get some of your time. And there is some jealousy, just so you know. There's some jealousy.
Yeah. Can I trade? Can I pick What are you doing 5:00 on Wednesday? Just throwing that out there.
Actually, I've been falsely advertising Brain Break this week. You are not a part of, I don't think.
I'm just coming at the tail end. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I just remembered that there is a very special guest joining Brain Break in your spot this week. So that's a big deal.
Yeah.
Yeah. But then what are you doing with Caitlin? I mean, it's the first session. It's a 5-part series. How do you kick off an entire series that is focused on grading, assessment, and feedback? Like, what are you focusing on? Do you know yet?
We've got some fireworks, some confetti, a big cake. Yeah. And speaking of, I was listening to last week's podcast with you and Jeff. The Teach Better Tiger might make its premiere on Wednesday. So.
No, Alex posted a picture of what the Teach Better Tiger should look like on Twitter literally after that episode came out. And I was like, okay, approved.
So that might be making its appearance. Or we might just drop some nuggets. The goal is for this series that people will get value if they show up each and every week. It'll kind of build. But each one's also going to be sort of like a silo. So if you can only make this week, we want to leave you with a lot of wisdom and a lot of ideas to ponder and think about. If you don't come back for another 3 or 4 weeks, you can still pick up wherever you left off. That's kind of our goal. So we actually do have a script, if you can believe it. Thank God for Caitlin. So we've got a script. We've got some major points we're going to be trying to address and make sure that we get out. We're going to talk about how to have the conversations with other people. Yeah. So that you're not just on an island trying to figure it out. How to present this if you're an administrator to your teachers, from teacher to teacher, from teacher to admin, from teacher to parent, you name it, trying to have all of those conversations, the big points, and then answering a lot of questions that people might have.
Yeah, no, I really value that because people are busy, Dave. It's not because they don't want to tune in for 5 weeks and consume all these tips and tricks, but it's nice to be able to be flexible with your professional development. And what I love about this is that they're going to be able to tune in live. Obviously, everything that streams on like Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, and Twitch is saved. If you like go to our YouTube page, like you'll find all the videos even after the fact. But then we're making it easy. Like mid-May, we're going to take all those videos and throw it in an academy course, a free course for all of you guys. So you could watch them in order again, or just get a refresh there as well. So there's some thought behind the crazy things that the Teach Better team does every so often.
When you're involved, yes, there's a lot of thought behind it. You're right.
Dave, you brought up something really interesting. I want to pull it up because, I won't actually, I thought I had it up and I don't now. But one of the comments in the private Facebook group was about pushback. And that post specifically had a connotation of like pushback on mastery learning. If you're trying to implement mastery learning, what do you do when you get pushback? But grading, feedback, and assessment, any shifts you might do also could result in pushback from your colleagues, from your administrator, from your students, from your parents. What are your thoughts on like a teacher trying something new and people coming in either in your classroom or, passive aggressively giving any pushback on, trying something, taking a risk?
Yeah, there's going to be pushback regardless. I mean, that's the reality. Anytime you do something new, especially in education in schools, there will be pushback because new means different, which means it's not the way that we experienced it. And there's always going to be that tendency for people to say, it was good enough for me. Why change it? Don't fix what ain't broke. Mm-hmm. I'm a firm believer that you keep breaking what needs to be fixed. Mm-hmm. And that's where the conversations come into play. You need to be willing to have the conversations. You need to be willing to talk to people. You need to at least be able to explain and defend your why so that you can move forward. I'm a firm believer that you need to have the conversations with people that disagree with you because that's what makes you better. Yeah. It's not about getting into a fight. It's not about you trying to convince everybody else that they're wrong. But when you can have those conversations with other people, at times it refines your beliefs. It helps chisel off the edges of some areas that you might have questions, just having the conversation with somebody else.
Dave, I really don't want to come across as a stalker. So forgive me for what I'm about to say. Uh-oh. But I was listening to a podcast that you were on recently, and you went through, and I'm not going to be able to say it as eloquently, so I'm going to ask you to repeat it. You went through a study that was done by an educational researcher that looked at schools and their success rate. And you were like, 95% of what we do works. And so can you kind of go back into that mindset? Because I think it goes into this ability to handle pushback when you recognize that people are comfortable because things are working, but they can learn better. And so could you talk a little bit about what that was about?
Yeah. So the research is John Hattie's research from 12, 13, 14 years ago, did the big meta-analysis where he said, is all the stuff we're trying in schools, is it really making a difference? And his research really identified two things. One, it's making a difference. 95% of what we do in schools works. 95% of what we're doing in schools is doing its job. And that sounds amazing on the surface.
It does.
Now, when I throw my leadership hat on, though, that's also the challenge. It's also the challenge in a situation like this when you are trying to do something different, because if 95% of what you're doing is working, people would look at you and say, why change? Well, his research goes on to say, although it all works, some things actually work better. Some things are actually more effective. And he goes through and he analyzes and says, what's the stuff that's most effective? And 3 of the top 5 things that are most effective are student progress monitoring, feedback, and not labeling students. What does that all have to do? I mean, that's basically what we're talking about all the time here, the Teach Better team. When you say, what are we trying to do to help make people better? It's taking what's already good and saying, what you're doing is good, but how can we now make it better? How can we make it more efficient, more effective, and better for kids?
You know, it's so funny. That makes me think about anytime I'm in a workshop with educators and we're trying something. I don't care what the workshop's on. Literally, it could be on any topic. And there's always a teacher, typically somebody sitting in like the front row or the middle, like one of those people. And they go, oh, so I need to throw out everything I've done for the past 22 years teaching because I'm going to start doing this. And they'll, and my face is always the same every time. I'm like, no, like absolutely not. You like listen up, all of our listeners right now, or if you're listening, it's after the fact, you are doing incredible work. Do not throw it out because we want to take what you're doing and just sprinkle in a little bit like of change, a little bit of risk, a little bit of that pursuit of better. And it doesn't mean that you're like wiping the slate clean. Now, you might have an activity that you do that you really love that you realize may not fit in XYZ. We could dive into that. But in terms of like the work you're doing as an educator, keep it. We just need to add a little bit of like adjustments, like a little bit of fluff, a little bit of glitter, a little bit of enhancement, right?
And you are spot on so many levels. And I feel like I'm going to geek out here. So slow me down if I start to go down too far down the geek tunnel. Okay. Yeah. So when we're talking about change, there are 2 types of change. There's first order change and second order change. First order change is the change that's actually extremely effective. It's the stuff that actually sticks. And first order change means you're simply going to adjust something you're already doing. So for example, if I say I eat ice cream every night, I am an ice creamaholic like you, Ray. If I say I'm going to try to eat better, so instead of 3 scoops of ice cream, tonight I'm going to do 2. That's going to be a more effective change than me saying instead of ice cream, I'm eating broccoli every night. What happens every year with New Year's resolutions is a lot of people do that second order change, which is where they say, I'm throwing the baby out with the bathwater and putting something else in. Right. And 3 weeks later, it doesn't stick. The stuff that sticks is when you refine, when you take something and simply start chiseling away at it and saying, I'm going to take something that I already have, something that's already established, and just start to make that thing better. That's what actually sticks. That's what works. And that's what we ask educators to do as well. You know, that goes back to Danielle made a comment early on that her school is going back to face-to-face real soon. And she hasn't been in a face-to-face environment in over a year. Yeah. And that's the same conversation we're having with people right now. Right. We're not saying scrap everything you've done for the last year. It's think about the things that have actually worked and how can you bring those into whatever environment you're in. Focus on the evergreen things, identify what's working, and continue to move forward with that.
I do have to say, Dave, in terms of ice cream, which I know shouldn't have been my take from your narrative, I do want to give a shout out and to completely blame 100% of the blame on Livia. Liv just sent me a carton of coffee ice cream with chocolate chips. Mother. And I have to tell you, I was doing well, like finding a balance in my life. And now it seems like a scoop of ice cream makes sense after every meal, breakfast included, because it's coffee. So I don't see any problem.
There you go.
Ice cream and in the abundance currently in my life. So thank you, Livia, for taking all the blame of my current ice cream consumption.
That does sound incredible, though. Oh, coffee with chocolate chips. My
So
goodness.
good. Oh my gosh.
Okay.
It's the death of me, Dave. Maybe I'll just send you, there's about half a container left. Do you think I could just mail it your way?
Done. I don't even care. Bring it. It can be refrozen or something, right? I don't know.
I think so. Like, even if it melted, just stir it up so the chocolate chips don't settle to the bottom.
Okay.
And then, I think that's good. I do appreciate Liv's taking all the blame. So go backwards to actually probably the more important part of what you were saying, Dave. Regardless of what we're implementing, regardless of the change, it's those little steps that you're saying that sticks. So for an educator that's returning back to the classroom, for an educator that's changing their grading style or their feedback practice, for an educator that is implementing the grid method for the first time and they're receiving that pushback, some of the feedback that I would give that educator in terms of the changes they're making is that when you make little changes, they're easier for me to justify. So when I get some of that pushback, I'm able to truly identify what was the intention behind this change. Why did I truly feel that this small change was necessary? So when I get people that ask me the hard questions that may feel like pushback, they might just be asking questions to want to learn more and, dive into that, explore my choices. I'm able to justify them because I can get to the root of the change versus when I overhaul and completely change something large, it's a little bit harder to explain all the reasons why every single element of the massive change had to take place. Does that make sense at all?
It makes 100% sense about what you're talking about. Let me rewind because I just butchered that. Yes, that made sense, Rae. What you're describing to me, I used to jokingly call conference-itis. I feel like a lot of people go to conferences, they hear an amazing 50-minute presentation about overhauling some big thing in their classroom. They leave that conference on fire thinking, I need to change everything. And then 2 weeks later, they're like, it doesn't work for me. What's going on? It doesn't work. So they fall back to what they always did. Yeah. One thing I love about you, Rae, is you constantly tell people, here's something tactical and practical that you can take away. In a bite-sized chunk, here's a first step. You don't have to do it all. But then once you master that first step, you're intuitively going to say, oh, but there's got to be more. What's that next step? And then you're ready for the next step. You're like a physical trainer for pedagogy. You build people's stamina one step at a time when they're ready for it. And I think that's what we as educators need to give ourselves permission to do. Right. We're so focused on, but I have all these kids in front of me right now that deserve the best, and they do. But you're not going to give them your best unless you give yourself permission to take it a step at a time.
Well, and I think you really identified kind of like that slow progression that if we all chose to embrace, after a while, we would see massive change that we are eager to see right away. Because when you take one strategy, one small tweak, and you implement it, you can see the successes, but you can also easily identify the gap it didn't fill. Right. So when you see a massive gap, something that you really want to achieve that's a large endeavor, you can throw the kitchen, everything in the kitchen refrigerator at it, but it may not, you don't know what worked, what's actually fixing the problem. So when you do it slowly but surely, you're able to actually fill each gap intentionally.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's, for those of us that have been in education for a decade or 2 decades or pushing 3 decades, we've experienced that pendulum, right? We joke about the pendulum of education that, it's just a fad. It'll be back in 10 years if I wait long enough. And that's why, because we throw the baby out with the bathwater, everything but the kitchen sink, and we throw out a bunch of good stuff. And 5 or 6 years go by and we're like, well, what happened to that? Why did I stop doing that amazing thing that worked? And we go and we grab it again, and we pull it back in. But to pull that back in, we get rid of something else that worked, as opposed to just holding on to what works, identifying what works, and make those subtle changes. Like you said, the scientific method. I just had a talk with Becky Schnexer last week. Brilliant, by the way.
Love her.
A scientist, if I've ever met one.
If you're not connected to Becky Schnexer, she's on the team, but she is an incredible educator. K-5 science teacher, literally the coolest human.
Right.
I want to be in her class. I don't know how to express. I know I'm old. I don't care. I would go back to elementary school if Becky was my teacher.
I kind of want to be her. She goes to the Galapagos Islands. She goes to the Amazon. She wants to go to Iceland. She does all the things.
Real deal. Yeah. She's as authentic and transparent and true as possible. She's so cool.
And she was talking about this. A science teacher talking about the scientific method and how you have to just change one variable at a time, come up with a hypothesis, try one variable at a time, If it works, amazing. If not, move on to something else. Einstein said, science is the art of being less wrong. That's all it is. You're out there trying to be less wrong each time. And honestly, that's what teaching is too. Teaching is the art of trying to be less wrong. Try to be a little bit better every single day.
So, oh my gosh, I feel like I know that mantra. Like, I feel like that speaks to me somehow. Dave, I don't want to necessarily get off track. I know that people can post questions. So like, we really are here, live question and answer. If you guys have questions that you want us to talk about or just topics you want to hear, feel free to throw them in the comments. That's why we're here. We'll also be recapping the mastermind here in a little bit. But Dave, when we're talking about small little changes, it's easy for us to say, hey, we've seen this successfully in education. But this happens and can be a positive thing that any person chooses to do in any area of their life. I mean, all of us have an area, if not 1, 2, 3, or 4, that we are finding little like tweaks are getting us closer to our end result. Can I put you on the spot and ask, like, do you have areas that you're currently tweaking?
I've got a lot. I do.
Is that weird to ask?
No, it's not weird. Think about the conversations you and I, or Jeff and I have had lately. No, obviously it's an open book conversation. But first of all, as an educator, I'm a person first. We wear all these labels: dad, educator, administrator, leader, whatever the fancy title is that you guys gave me, a Teach Better team, director of leadership and development. We've got all these titles, but we are people first. And I can't say I want to be better in all those other aspects if I'm not trying to be better as a person. So yeah, I do have a lot of areas that I'm trying to get better in. One is to stop being so anal about all the things I want to be better at. I've got this huge bucket list and all these things I'm constantly just trying to check off the list just so I can say I did it. But that doesn't necessarily make me better. It's just me trying to knock things off my list.
Right.
So I am trying to really focus on the focus and identify the priorities in my life that deserve to get better. So I'm not out there just spinning my wheels, just trying to check things off a list.
Interesting. No, that makes sense to me. I mean, what is that analogy? I'm always the worst at metaphors and you're the king, but like when the tide rises, like all the boats go up. What's that phrase? Like you focus on one area of your life to be better, and there's other elements that just naturally are enhanced, naturally get better because of, you focusing more and you're being better in other areas. I don't know.
Yeah. And this is a preview to the next few Wednesdays, but that's really the essence of grading reform too. Changing the way that you grade is not going to, truly, it does not do anything to improve student outcomes. It doesn't. I don't care if you use 1, 2, 3, 4s, ABCs, sticker charts, or high fives. But when you start having the conversations about grading, it changes everything you do in your classroom. And it's the same thing. When you start having conversations about what it is that you want to do better, it opens up a lot of opportunities for you to improve, and then everything else improves down the line. So
there you go. Man, good conversation. Are you, by the way, I feel like I also want to know, are you going to fix brain break? You guys have had these like massive reflections, hard hitting like when is like Pictionary coming back? Like what's the deal with brain break on Wednesdays? Are you and Jeff figuring that out?
I think it's kind of interesting that we've had a couple of these deep conversations. You joined this last week to say, hey guys, it's getting a little deep here. And all of a sudden, I'm not going to be there this week. I feel like things might be getting back on track because I'm going to be gone.
I do want to tell you that the person that is replacing you this week will absolutely bring shenanigans to the highest of highs. So you're right, actually.
There we go. Fair enough. And that's okay. I'm strong enough to say that's okay. Sometimes the kids need a substitute teacher just to bring fun back into their lives.
This guest will definitely be the fun. I would want this person as my substitute teacher. I can tell you that. So
very cool. Okay. I'm intrigued.
Do you not know?
I haven't looked, to be honest. Maybe I'll go look after I'm done here.
Yeah. Okay.
Right. That would involve doing some foresight and planning. I normally let things at 5:00 on Wednesday around 4:50 is when I normally check it out to figure out what are we doing today. So
I'll give you a hint. So this person has been on lives before.
Okay.
This person has been on Brain Break before, but not, I don't think, with you. This person was on Brain Break with me. And this person is on the Teach Better team. And this person has not been live and won't be live any other time next week, hasn't been live for a while. So that kind of eliminates some people. And this person wrote 2 books that I think literally, if everyone read, our education system would look completely different. But, not everyone's choosing to read the amazing content that's out there. So, that's
Yeah.
those are my hints. Those are my hints. If you want to throw your guesses in the comments, you feel free. So, Dave, we've been live for 35 minutes. I know that we have been able to talk through a bunch, but I do want to make sure that we recap the Admin Mastermind, because that's a conversation that happens every single Tuesday, once in the morning, once in the afternoon. It's an incredible group of leaders that get together and brainstorm and just have like a safe space to vent and problem solve and find hopefully a solution along with each other. So I was happy to jump into one over the last few weeks, which was kind of fun. So what's the conversation? What's been going on?
So it's ironic that the conversation that I'm bringing to the table today bleeds into the conversation we just had. Not about who's taken over for Brain Break, but the earlier conversation. So over the last couple of weeks, we've had quite a few new people join us at our mastermind, which is always amazing. And it takes it to a whole new level when these people join us and they're the ones that bring their questions right away. It's almost like they were just looking for an opportunity to have somebody to share with, or they just had something that they were just burning to ask. And then they automatically put trust in this group of leaders to say, I know that you can help me through this. And we had somebody recently that came who literally just moved across the country. They moved from the south west all the way up to the Pacific Northwest. Okay. So opposite ends of the country. And they moved in the middle of the pandemic. They were working at a school that saw the pandemic from 2 completely different lenses. Their political world was flipped upside down. Okay. Their schools were completely different. And this person had a very real, and I thought it was a powerful conversation, similar to the conversation we had earlier. They said, I feel like I'm coming into the school and I see things so much differently than everybody else. Mm. When do I poke the bear? When do I push buttons? When do I bring my own opinion to the table? Do I ask the questions? Do I push them? Do I try to change them? Or do I just sit back? And I felt like that was a very real conversation. And it's also a conversation that a lot of the other leaders chimed in and said, I've experienced that. I've experienced that. And like every leader that's ever gone to a new school has experienced that. I think every teacher that's gone to a new school has experienced that. Every new teacher that steps into a school has experienced that. Yep. So I'm curious your thoughts on this.
I mean, I think that this is actually the scariest part of starting a new building. I think this is the scariest part of changing jobs. I think this is one of the fears I had and carried with me my entire beginning of my career, because I kind of like to bring new ideas. I like to stir the pot, not because I in any way want to come across the wrong way to, my new colleagues. I want to be close to them. I want to be friendly with everybody. But I don't like to settle. I'm constantly trying to elevate and do different things and see how it works and reflect and have those conversations. So yeah, this is something that's really hard. And I think early on in my career, people were like, Rae, you can try new things, just close your door. And then for a while I was like, but that always doesn't work either. It doesn't work necessarily to close your door, because kids talk, or you're doing something that's loud, or XYZ, like it always comes back, and handling that is tricky. Yeah. I think one of the biggest things I've realized is that if you're receiving any concern with that, it's kind of like, I don't know how to phrase this, but you have to almost like push topics in your own classroom until somebody else asks about it in a way that they want to learn, rather than a way that they're being critical. I don't know if that makes sense.
No, it makes total sense. And especially from the teacher lens there, what you're talking about, some of the best advocates, or some of the best missionaries, if you will, for new ideas are the kids in your classroom, especially if you're at the secondary classroom or the secondary level and kids travel from teacher to teacher. Mm-hmm. Kids have no filter. They will go into Mrs. Jones or Mrs. Smith's classroom and say, why are you doing things the same way that Miss Hughart is? Why don't you grade the same way as what? And they will ask those questions, and they will push the buttons, and they will use logic. They'll use emotion. They'll use reason. until that teacher comes down and asks you what you're doing. It doesn't require you standing up at every staff meeting and preaching, standing up on the soapbox and talking about why you're right. It brings me back also to the conversation we had Wednesday at Brain Break when we were getting deep and serious, especially towards the end. Yeah. Very rarely do you have to explicitly say, here's what I'm doing and why I'm doing it, my expectations. Model it, live it, and let people see what you're doing and see the fruit of your labors, and then let them start to model it, copy it, or ask questions about it.
I think that is the best piece of advice. But then I will say that when someone comes and asks, you need to remember that regardless of anything that comes out of your mouth, you have to be a learner too.
Yes.
I think that's then where the next hurdle, the next fault happens is, okay, you've stirred the pot. Somebody noticed, somebody asked you about it. Now, if you come across as a know-it-all, if you don't care to get to know them as people outside of just telling them about how great you are and how smart you are and how successful you are, like if you're not approaching it saying, oh my gosh, I'm so flattered that they want to learn something, you need to have that same mentality of if they're coming to you eager to learn something, you should be going to them eager to learn something that they do well. Because every single educator in whatever building you work in, there's some positive thing that they do, and you should be trying to consume it.
100%. It's, we had a conversation a couple of weeks ago, I think it was 2 weeks ago at our mastermind, and it was a similar conversation, but it was new administrators trying to get their feet wet, trying to say, how do I get that opportunity? And we talked through a common question that leaders have to answer all the time. And I think it's a question that honestly sets people up to make this mistake that we're talking about right here. And the question is, at every interview I've ever gone on, they've asked for a leadership position, please describe your 90-day plan. What are you going to do in your first 90 days? And people know that question's coming, and people come to the table prepped with an outline of what they're going to do in their first 90 days. And I'm going to tell you that is a setup of a question, because it tells people that they need to have a plan of all the stuff they're going to change and they're going to fix before they even walk into the building and assess the needs and meet the people and form relationships.
You haven't pre-tested anything, right?
Absolutely. So the answer to what are you going to do in the first 90 days is figure out what I need to do the next 90 days. And that should be your answer every 90 days, is that you're spending every single day learning your people, learning the system, so you can figure out what you need to change, what you need to adjust, and what you need to hold on to. But I think we set people up to think when somebody new comes in, they have to shake it all up. They have to do everything different. Sometimes I was guilty of this as an administrator. I would hire teachers and I would whisper to them, I want you to change everything. I want you to be radical so that other people, but then all that did was put them in the firing squad. So everybody was attacking them as some rebel. So,
it's interesting, Dave. First of all, I think that insight is so valuable. And it makes me think about this idea, because when you said, how does a leader like change something in a building? My first thought always is like, not form a committee, but like get people's opinions, get people's voices in the conversation of what you're trying to achieve. Yeah. And so as I'm, listening to you, it's kind of like flipping that around. When you're a teacher and you want to change something, maybe don't do it right away, but just start talking about it to your colleagues. Like as you're getting to know them, learning, oh my gosh, do you remember all the years of starting at a new building and trying to learn everyone's name? Like that's a joke and a half, especially during COVID. It's so hard to like learn your colleagues' names and get to know them. So while you're going through getting to know the layout of the school, getting to know people's, first names and last names and who you work with and who do you report to and all those details of working in any sort of building, then as you introduce yourself, feel free as almost a conversation starter to go to somebody that you're trying to form a relationship with and say, hey, I'm looking into this like new thing I think I want to implement. Have you ever done anything like this? Is there anything similar you've tried? Because then when you try it, you're not that teacher that like was a rebel, but you were trying to collaborate on it.
Yeah. An activity that I do with a lot of leaders when I'm meeting with them or working with them is I have them do an activity where, let's say that you're a building principal. I ask the leaders to write down the names of every staff member in their building, from kitchen staff, custodial staff, teaching staff, paraprofessionals, you name it, every staff member. And then I have them do an activity where I say, imagine money is not an obstacle. Can you buy a unique and special birthday present for everybody on that list? Do you know your people well enough to do that? And I'll tell you, whether you are a classroom teacher and you want to do that for all the other teachers you work with, or if you're a principal, if you can do that and you know what makes every single person tick, it's going to be a whole lot easier for you to have those conversations, because you're going to be able to weave in relatable things. You can go up to Mrs. Smith or Mrs. Jones and say, would your son or daughter, and you know their name, like something like this if they were in my classroom? You can use some of those metaphors or similes or whatever it is that you want to use that are relevant to them in those conversations. But if you don't know them, if you've never experienced them, if you've never talked to them, if you don't have any kind of relationship with them, don't try to change anything they're doing, because you don't know anything about them. So,
wow, that was gold. To me, that was the mic drop. That's what I have to say, that is a skill deficit I have. I need to be better at that for sure. Getting to know people on a personal level to be able to do that better. I think I know people, like I'm thinking like the Teach Better team. Like I know people on the team from an educational standpoint, but I don't know that I'm as strong to do what you just challenged. And in some capacity, I have colleagues at school, but I also have colleagues within the team, and I can't do that. Like I want to, but I can't.
I couldn't do it either. The first time I walked myself through this activity, I could do this for my secretary. I could do it for a couple of grade level leads who I would always call in and always collaborate with and always have those conversations with. But I'll be honest, there were some people when I was making my staff list, I couldn't even put their first name along with their last name. There were some people that worked in my cafeteria who I couldn't put down anything. I didn't know who they were. I mean, I could wave to them and say hi. I knew they worked there, but I didn't know their names. And that was the first indictment on me that, I needed to be better about this. So I made it a point, and literally I would walk around with my iPad and I was constantly taking notes on any little detail I could about the people I work with, because I wanted to know more. And I had to make it an intentional focus. And I know it seemed contrived and I'm always writing things down about people, but I had to do it because it was important to me. And I wanted to know people better. So I had to put myself through that exercise. Otherwise, there was no way people were going to go to bat doing some of the crazy things that I was trying to encourage people to do. There's no way people were going to trust me to take a risk and be innovative if I didn't even know them. If I wasn't willing to know them as a person, there's no way they were going to be willing to trust me as a person. So,
if there's maybe a challenge that can come from our biweekly family check-in today, it's, could you do that activity? And if not, what can you do this week to get a little closer to doing it, right? I'm not talking about, can you list every staff member? And if you can't, then by Friday, you need to be able to. Like, that's not what I'm asking. But if you don't know everybody that works within your school building, if you don't know everybody that works within your community, can you take a step this week, large or small? Because I see there's a comment right now that someone's like, oh, it's really hard when you're an introvert. Guys, this is going to be hard regardless of the you are. It's going to be really, really tricky. But can you do one thing, regardless of what that is in your comfort level? Can you do something to be better in this area? Because for me, the answer is yes, I could do something. So now I need to actually execute, right?
Yeah. And speaking of Facebook user introvert, you might not know this. I'm an introvert too. Like I would much rather just sit in a corner and read a book all day long or listen to a podcast than talk to anybody. No, that's me. I mean, that's the reality. And this kind of thing is super hard and super challenging. But when you're in a leadership position, the people that you're serving, all they want to know is, do you know me? And if you're a teacher, you don't necessarily have to start with trying to do this with all the other staff members in the building. Do this with your kids. Could you do this with your first hour class? Could you do it with your homeroom class? Do you know your kids well enough? I mean, and right now, in this crazy world we're in, I'm going to throw something out there that people can disagree with. I would actually argue, if you're doing something virtual, it's probably easier for you to do this now than ever before. Because now you can see the posters sitting behind Johnny and Susie. You can see the dog and the cat running across. You can hear mom and dad screaming and yelling at the other kids in the background. So you have an opportunity to know more about your kids than ever before. You know, if back 2-3 years ago, you started every year by passing out the get to know you worksheet to your kids on the first day of school, and you read through 150 of them in your middle school classroom, and then by day 3, you forgot everything on those papers because you already passed them back and you just went through the exercise. I would challenge you to go back and reread at least one class and see if you can do that for one class for 30 kids. See if you can do it. And it is hard, but you can do it.
Challenge. It's an awesome, awesome challenge. And I will say, for me personally, when I, like the teacher I am, the educator I am, I would tell my students about this challenge. Like I would go in full transparency, be like, guys, I was live with Dave on Sunday because we do our bi-weekly family check-in, and they'd be like, yeah, we know, Miss Hughart. And I'd be like, okay, and Dave had this activity and I want us to be able to do it. So can we work together for the next week that we can like all try and do this for the entire group? And then they can help me, I can help them, we can help each other. If like Susie and James know something, but I don't know something about James, Susie can help me figure out the thing about James. Like I would make this an entire activity. I'm just saying.
And feel free to call it out. Tell people why you're doing it. You know, everything else we do in our classrooms, we tell kids why we're doing it. Tell kids why you're doing it. Make it relevant. Let them know that we're trying to learn more about them too.
Well, and yeah, Dave, I don't know about you, but this is really a time in schools when there's a lot of movement, right? Like new job postings, people are announcing that they're leaving for whatever reason to go on to new, challenges and adventures. And there was somebody that just posted in my school building like this weekend saying they were leaving. And I had this moment of, well, I've worked with this person for 5 years. I don't know that I like worked with them in those 5 years. I don't know that I learned something from them or alongside them or collaborated with them in any way. What a missed opportunity. Because
Right.
They're good. That they had something that could have made me better. And it's like, there's a lot of reflection there to say, how can I really take advantage in a beautiful, positive way of the incredible people I'm surrounded by right now,
Yeah. That's such good insight and such a good reflection. I know when I first started off as a teacher, I spent my first few years, and I've told the story multiple times to many people, thinking I knew it all. And I put myself in a silo. We talk about how education is such a lonely business. I chose to be lonely because I didn't think I could learn from other people. And I thought I knew it all. Or there were times when I didn't know, and I didn't want people to know what I didn't know. So I'd close myself off. I was that teacher that always closed my door to my classroom before we had safety protocols mandating it. I didn't want people looking in. I didn't want people stopping in to see what I was doing. And I think, man, how much more could I have known? What kind of teacher could I have been earlier on to build off? I mean, I could have changed destinies had I just opened up and listened to other people sooner.
I love this takeaway. I hope each and every one of you are thinking about what small step you can take, whether it be with students, with colleagues, in a leadership capacity, whatever you're doing. I hope that this becomes something you're thinking about. I will definitely be thinking about this.
If people are looking for a starting point, start with your secretary and your custodian. They're the ones with all the power already anyway. So if there's anybody that you really want to know and anybody you want to be able to have that casual conversation with, your secretary and your custodian. Start there and then grow out.
So cool. So cool. All right, guys, we really appreciate you tuning in to our biweekly family check-in. We do this every other Sunday, regardless of anything else going on in the world, because we want to be here for the celebratory moments, and we want to be here for the times when you just need to brainstorm because there's a hurdle in front of you. So please, please, please continue to add this to your calendar every other Sunday. I also hope that you guys head to teachbetter.com/events calendar so you can see all the times that we're live, including ambassador hangouts, the times that we're live for the grid method, building a grid series. We have the Focus on the Focus series starting this week. Brain Break happens every week. Mastery Chat happens every week. I mean, literally, I can't keep up with the Teach Better team, and I am a co-owner. So if I were you, I would subscribe to the events calendar because Dave and I can't keep it straight ourselves. So thank you, Dave, for coming live, talking shop. I love hanging out with you, so I appreciate you.
All the time and anytime. Just tell me when.
So good. Well, for everybody else, we hope you have a incredible week, right? Like, regardless of a week you have ahead, regardless of the hurdles. I know I just got information about state testing that's coming. All that aside, we are better together. Let us know if you need anything. We'd love to be here to brainstorm and have you join the mastermind and bring your questions if you're a leader or if you're an educator and the mastermind isn't a good fit for you. Just reach out, DM us. We'd love to be here to celebrate you. So we wish you nothing but an absolutely incredible week. All right, Dave, you ready to get out of here?
I'm ready. Have a great week, everybody. See you soon.